Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Movie Minds Podcast. It is I, Joe, and this is my co-host, Brad.
I'm Brad. How are you doing? Feeling good, Joe?
I am feeling pretty good, all things considered. Yes, and we have a guest with us this evening. We have Jim with us to talk about some Christmas films of his choice, Home Alone and Home Alone 2. Jim, if you could please tell us why you thought these would be a great series of films to talk about for the Christmas holiday, and try not to let my cat distract you in the background.
I won't let the cat distract me if my tree behind me doesn't distract you. I appreciate you guys letting me come
Yeah.
on. We were chit chatting about these movies, and I said, "Hey, listen, if you do a podcast on them, I want in." And of course, I had to break out the red and green sweater. Got the tree behind me. Christmas is just a few days away, so I appreciate you guys picking these films, given the time of year. And one of the things that I had told you guys is that not only are they just classic Christmas films that every year, I mean, I think it's everybody's go-to. You say, hey, what's Elf is great, Santa Claus, awesome. Some of those old school, It's a Wonderful Life, love it.
Santa
But
Claus.
come on, everybody loves Home Alone and they love Home Alone 2. And I don't think there's a lot of people out there. I'm definitely not one of them where I'm like, no, 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 put on the original. Or, no, 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 put on the sequel. Like I'm always, hey, Home Alone 2, as long as it's got Macaulay Culkin, as long as it's the McAllister family, and I think we're all in agreement. In my humble opinion, there's only two Home Alones, just like there's only one Space Jam. Just throwing that out there.
We've got hoops.
And so,
Mhm.
what I love about Home Alone 2 in particular is that one of the rare times in cinematic history, the sequel actually holds up. The sequel is almost as good, if not just as good. If not, some people might argue a little bit better. And I think that's such a rare air in movies, especially nowadays, where when a movie does hit and does well in the box office, Hollywood is in such a hurry to rush some crap script to just throw something together to get it back in theaters to just ride the wave and make as much money, not really caring what the product is going to be. And I still, as I get older, because sometimes when you're a kid, you have these movies that you loved, and then as an adult, you go back and watch them, and you're like, "Oh man, what was I thinking? This is horrible." But I watch Home Alone, and I watch Home Alone 2 at least once, if not two, three times every Christmas season, and I love every minute of it. I can quote you all the quotes, tell you all the scenes, tell you all the characters, the cameos, and I just think they're both awesome films. And I also might argue that Home Alone 2, the plot itself, might actually hold up a little bit better than the original Home Alone. And one of my biggest critiques of Home Alone, I get that it's a movie, it's for fun, but there's a scene in Home Alone where, okay, they fly to France, they leave Kevin behind, but she frantically calls the police in Chicago and they're tossing her back and forth between different lines. And, finally they get a cop to go out to the house. He knocks on the door and he says, hey, tell her to count her kids again. Kid's not here. When in reality, I mean, let's be real. This kid is left home. The neighborhood would be crawling with cops. Marv and Harry would be looking at each other like, why are there all these cops? Their whole plan would be thwarted. And there you go. Drop the curtain, movie over. That's your film.
Has a child been involved in a violent altercation with drunken and/or mentally ill member of his immediate family?
No.
And so the way that he ends up on the wrong plane in New York, and then ends up having this, great adventure, in New York, the way they were able to bring Marv and Harry back in, to have the same villains, the same characters. And even though the plots are similar, to add a little variance in there, I think there's a lot of genius to the sequel, which is not easy to do, to make a second film that is arguably as good as the original, given how good it was and how well it did, at the theaters.
Yeah, very well said, Jim. Did you want to add anything, Brad, to that one?
Yes,
I know
I
you
did.
mentioned something.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
did. Let's
Be my guest.
talk about sequels. So, like Jim says, it is rare that a sequel measures up to the original. Um, One of the ones that's often mentioned is Godfather Part Two. Um, I think Rocky 2 is good.
Mm,
Those so there's a few, but as you said, Jim, it's usually not up to par because they rush it through. Usually, script is shoddy, plot holes. You can't get the same characters. You try to compensate for that with a fancy soundtrack or bigger explosions or something, which actually Home Alone 2 is bigger scope. It's in New York City, and you got a bunch of people there, including Donald Trump is in the hotel and stuff like that. So
Down the
no, but
hall and
I
to the
agree with
left.
you about that. I definitely agree with you about that. But I did want to mention also as well, it's ironic that Home Alone 1 and 2, Roger Ebert did not like both those. He panned them. I mean, he didn't completely trash them, but he didn't care for them.
And the whole business of the burglars trying to break in, and he contrives a very elaborate string of booby traps and trick ropes going here and there, and little fireworks that are going to go off and so forth to make life hard for them. These booby traps are nothing that any 8-year-old kid couldn't make if he had hundreds of thousands of dollars and the special effects department of a movie working for him. It's totally unrealistic.
And I guess he got with the program about what Home Alone's supposed to be about, the shtick. So by the time Home Alone 3 came out, he seemed to like that one more, which is, that's funny to have Roger Ebert that way. But yeah, I agree with you. 1 and 2, they're both right there. If you like the Home Alone, the franchise, they're both heavyweights. Same. So that was my initial thoughts.
Yeah. Good thoughts. I actually, I like what you said, Jim, about how it's very common for a studio to really just pump something out really quickly, and unfortunately, I think that you could argue that's sort of what the system of Hollywood has become. I mean, how many years have people been complaining about? Oh, we just rushed out for a quick buck. There's no heart in it. There's no time, no thought, no love to the script, and I'm going to hope that we're still going because I'm going on my spiel here, and yeah, the thing that I was worried about initially before recording this with you guys, I'm thinking, well, it's been a while since I've seen the Home Alone movies, and I remember liking them as a kid, and I always thought I liked the first one more, and I watched them pretty much back to back, and I watched the second one. I'm like, I'm liking this one more than the first one, and not by a little bit. I significantly liked it more. I liked it quite a bit, and I'm like, well, I feel like I'm going to be the person with the hot take. I'm going to break the podcast, okay, and just be like, I don't know, like I'm not used to being kind of in the minority on a feeling about a particular film in a big debate like that. Although usually they're pretty neck and neck, so I guess it's all right. But yeah, I really kind of wanted to talk about that because I mean, I think what Brad said was great. I think the one thing really missing to make Home Alone 2 perfect was more explosions. I mean, Home Alone definitely needed more explosions, make a bigger, better, more CGI Michael Bay style. Absolutely. No. But but no, I thought that I almost thought that there was a clever, subtle, but also finely crafted attention to detail with the second movie where you're right, they got a lot of the same people back, but in terms of like recreating the same shots, the same frames, the same sequences, a lot of the same gags. And a lot of times you'd think that this was cheap and cynical and okay, we have to do it because we're running the motions. Oh, we have these characters. This basic plot beat has to happen again. We've got to get the wet bandits back again but not because they're uncreative. It's almost like they're in on the joke because there's a lot of winks to the camera, a lot of fourth wall breaking. Like they know what they're doing, but they're still fully committed to it. They're fully committed to the characters. And I actually think there are some things that they built upon the foundation of the first movie and they use that to actually make it better. But I would say adding a more human element. But I'll leave the rest of my thoughts on and see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if we sat here and said, hey, name me a sequel that, and you guys are the big movie buffs, like, give me some sequels that live up to the original. And you think Temple of Doom, you think Empire Strikes Back. A trivia question that I love is what's the only technical sequel to win the Academy Award for Best Picture? And it's Godfather Part 2. Now, I'm not saying Home Alone is on the level of, some of the Godfather films. Not that I care for Part 3 personally, but when it comes to, Hollywood, knockout blockbusters, like I said earlier, I just think that both of the Home Alones hold up. Now, my only, I do miss John Candy in the original. Anytime John Candy comes into a film, God rest his soul. another kind of random movie from my childhood is Rookie of the Year. And if you
Mm.
remember that one, it's an okay picture. It's not bad. But you watch John Candy as the play-by-play announcer for the Cubs, and he'll have you rolling in stitches the way that when he's in the back of that U-Haul truck, driving Catherine O'Hara, across the country from Scranton to Chicago. And a lot of that stuff was improv. And so that's one piece from the original that is one of my favorite. When they're in the back of that U-Haul and he's talking about leaving the kid at the funeral home, I'm dying. Uh, and so I do miss that little bit of shtick. But then I might make the argument that Rob Schneider kind of fills that
Mm.
role a little bit in the second one as the bellhop is excellent. And so, kind of to your point, Joe, they each kind of follow a similar plot, but we're able to find some new ways of kind of keeping the jokes going.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and that was one thing that really impressed me. And uh, you, yeah, I think that yeah, John Candy just is really just an entertaining character actor in general. He usually does add a lot to a lot of the films that he's in. I do think I was curious though, since you bring that up, did either one of you in preparation for this watch the trailer for the films?
No, I did not.
I didn't even think of that.
Well, I normally don't either because I mean, there are different philosophies to these things, but I think that the piece kind of stands on its own and you sort of
Mhm.
interact with it and you can do your research after. But what the heck? My wife and I watched it, and the little DVD came with not many features. It was just, oh, the trailers. So we watched the trailers for one, two, and something else, and to kind of compare the marketing for them. And in the marketing, the first film, the trailer, they have John Candy up front and center, like he's going to be a much bigger part of the movie to clearly draw people in, so barely in it. So I thought that was very clever, but very different experience. If you went in like,
Oh
oh
yeah,
yeah, he's
no,
the draw. That's not
makes
quite
sense.
accurate.
Yeah, it's funny when you go back, you watch a movie that has it's become a hit. If you go back and watch when it came out, and you wonder like, how were they marketing this thing? And sometimes the trailers just way, how are they going to market this film? And it's completely different. Wasn't Macaulay Culkin in a film before with was he in Uncle Buck? Was that
Hmm.
with yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah. Um Now I remember that because when the when the Home Alones came out, I think I'm the same age as Macaulay Culkin, so I think I was the
Oh.
same age as Kevin McAllister. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. Um, wanted to follow up on something, Joe. When you said you liked Home Alone 2 better,
I think so. Yes. Surprisingly, yes.
and you think there's more like depth to it. Can you go into that again?
Um. Well, there's a perfect simplicity to the story of the first movie that I think is what makes it so great.
Mhm.
I really I love the parallel of you've got the young kid. All right, I guess I've got 2 parts here. But I'll try not to go on a rant. But you have the shovel killer, right? And he's entrenched in the neighborhood. The rumors, he's got his brothers and his cousins being, oh yeah, he killed his family. And of course, as a child would, their imagination runs wild. And you have this idea of another person based on the experiences other people have given you, and he doesn't have that direct content. So you've got that evil force, okay, that evil force of the unknown person, which we get to see that great scene where they're together, in the church and they kind of exchange their views. And I loved the balance of you've got the older man is able to give wisdom to the much younger man and vice versa. I love that balance is beautiful
Yeah,
because one person doesn't know something because of lack of experience, but through time, one man has kind of forgotten something. I think that is beautiful. And that's actually one thing I think that the first film does better, which arguably maybe brings it up for people. The the fact is I like that they build a lot more on a lot of details in terms of the gags and a lot more of the humor, and you're trying to work the reason for the bandits to work it. It's all very plausible. And like you guys mentioned about Kevin getting mixed up in the airport, that seems much more believable in a way. Like how are they going to make this happen again without it being ridiculous? And it actually kind of works. I think from a plot perspective, yes. The I think what they're trying to go for with the bird lady. Obviously, they're trying to do the same thing again, but adding another element to it because in some ways that's also very realistic because you in it maybe the fear is even more justified because you've got a young kid who is lost in a completely different city, wandering around in Central Park, and they have the scenes with the homeless people. And of course, that's going to be scary. It might be scary for a lot of adults. And so there's kind of this whole perception, I think, a little bit about homelessness. And I think the movie dances around some social commentary. And I like that it kind of tried to. But unfortunately, I felt like when I was seeing the Kevin and the lady connecting and talking, their conversation didn't gel quite as well thematically. Like, I wasn't exactly sure what I was supposed to get out of it. Like, she said something about, okay, like, she was disappointed, and there's a theme about trust in there. And but obviously it's such a complex issue of why people end up this way that we can't really dive into it and still keep it like this fun, family film. So I kind of, it's almost like I'm glad they touched on it, but maybe there's a way they could delicately balance it. So I think plot wise, the second film just it does so much while staying true to the original, but amping everything and making it more complex. Thematically, though, there is something about the simplicity of the first one I really like. But honestly, I think I think the second one I just love because of Tim Curry.
What's the matter? Store wouldn't take your stolen credit card?
I mean, I'm a Tim Curry fan, so I think automatically that's just, that's probably what pulled me in. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He's hilarious. Everything with the hotel, and of course, they both movies have little film references because of course the people making these things love all movies, and we got the gangster lines and the audio manipulate. I mean, that stuff is just hilarious to me. I love that on many levels, and I thought it was funny as a kid, and as a movie person, I appreciate it even more as an adult. So I just those parts are fantastic, and yeah. So I think I like it for some of the little complexities, but thematically, I don't know if it quite sells it like the first one did.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah.
To your point on Tim Curry, that scene when
Yes.
he's watching The Grinch, and then Tim Curry's face lights up almost exactly
Mhm.
like the
That
Grinch when he
transition.
finds out his credit card is stolen is
Yeah,
on
it's
on.
funny.
I also love when, like you were saying, when he's going through Central Park and he gets in the taxi cab and he says, "It's scary out there," and the guy turns, "It ain't much better in here, kid." And then for whatever reason, whenever I see that scene, it reminds me of like a scene from Ghostbusters when I don't know if it's Sly, or I think it's like a skeleton or something is like driving the taxi
Oh
cab.
yeah. Yeah.
Cracks me up. And then I was going to say too, is Uncle Buck, is that John Hughes? Is that also
Mm.
John Hughes? And I
Yeah.
want to say, because Macaulay Culkin crushed it the way he did, I love that scene when him and John Candy are going back and forth with the questions. Are you married? No. Why? It's a long story.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
Even more complicated story. But Brad, I'm kind of curious. You asked Joe and I, but like, if you had to choose one or two, which film are you going with?
Hmm. I
Oh,
think,
Brad,
yeah.
I did remember something else I could say, so I'll go after you because I forgot something. Go ahead.
Is it pertinent?
We'll see.
No, I if I had to, let me think. I think it's close if I had to pick one. I think I actually like Home Alone 2 better. I think I do.
Wow, I think that's a unanimous.
I
That's
think
that's
I
pretty
do.
impressive. I wasn't
I
expecting that.
That's a twist. I wasn't surprised. I thought I was going to be the outlier here, honestly.
No, yeah, well, maybe you talked me into. No, I'm just, it's close. Yeah, I do think I agree. That's why I asked you what you liked about it better, because I think over the years, as I've seen both of them at different times, I just think I think it is it's more rounded out. Um there's parts from, of course it's the original one, and so it introduces the concept, and I don't know if it's the plot, and the bird lady is, I don't know, I could take or leave her, but it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's Tim
Yeah.
Curry. It's I like the hotel. I like
Yes.
the energy in the hotel. And then he is like, this kid is I don't know, there's something going on with that family. Um this kid's a little sadistic. The, the mother, I don't, is there like
There's
some kind of Jungian like why is she keep why do they keep abandoning their son? I know she loves him, but like, you can't do that. There's no, I have 5 kids. I'm not doing that once, but there's no way I'm doing it twice. The same kid, and you left him in.
The movie really should have ended with the parents being thrown in jail for
Yeah,
negligence. Is
yeah.
actually
Well,
how it
that
should have.
that that scene with where they're talking to the officer and he's like, "Oh yeah, this happened before." You're like, "Okay, immediately call child services, movie over."
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm gonna need to see your hands. It's just
Home Alone 3 would have been Kevin in a foster home.
I
Oh,
don't know.
that's
It
dark.
is good. The gags in New York City. I said I like the hotel scenes, but he comes and goes from the hotel. And you also got to remember when in the 80s up until you had Giuliani take over, I mean, New York was scary. When you go to Central Park, I mean, it doesn't show the full, but I think a few years before that, you had the famous Central Park 5 case. You had a lot, that was it's a scariness there. So in Home Alone 1, like you said, it's, child, you're alone, and that's scary in and of itself. And now you have these two men coming in. And now you have that element is exponentially amplified. He's in the city, but somehow he becomes, like he's now like Super Saiyan Kevin or something. Like he's better at it or something. Has honed his skills. I
He just
also
evolved, yeah.
think, yeah, I like that. I also I think it's funnier. I mean, they're both funny, but again, you got some of the same gags repeated. The movie thing. I like the second one better overall.
Well, I'm glad you actually you touched on something, Brad, because I thought that the one thing that maybe the reason why I like the second one more because I figured that out. The heart I think I was talking about just when it comes to connecting with characters, right? You have to find something likable. And you're right. The family is kind of really unlikable, I think, in the first movie. There's a lot of meanness, a lot of nastiness. And I think there's kind of that mean spiritedness to a lot of the first movie. And Kevin, I know he's a little kid, but he's just nasty. And it's like, okay, well, clearly he's a product of his environment and he's taking it out on the burglars. And I'm like, that's funny. But in the second movie, I'm like, okay, he's a little older. I think he's just much more likable of a character, and you got to see a lot more of Kevin's good qualities. I genuinely liked him more as a young person. In the first movie, I'm just like he's just a mean kid from a mean family, and they messed with the wrong house, basically, which is funny, but it doesn't help me connect on that human level. So that's the other thing that was that pertinent, Brad.
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Okay, just double check.
Yeah, I think that scene in the toy store where he gives the extra money to the children's hospital fund, and he's talking to you know the owner of Duncan's Toy Chest, even though he doesn't know it at first, and you see that good-heartedness, and then he gets the two turtle doves, and then obviously he gives the turtle dove back to the bird lady at the end of the film. I also find it funny that like in the early 90s, it seems like all of these actors and actresses that played these side roles were all the owner of Duncan's Toy Chest was the owner of the Chicago Cubs and Rookie of the Year. Maggie was the foster home parent in Angels in the Outfield. Clearly, all of my children's movies were sports movies, which is where some of these references are coming from. But I really like in number two. I just think it's cool how they almost had like the writers were almost like, if we're gonna do this, let's go all out. Let's go big. Let's put him in the freaking biggest city at the biggest time of the year. And I think that's what like me watching it as a kid and then still me watching it as an adult, when he's riding around in that limousine eating a cheese pizza and rolling up to one of the biggest toy stores in the world, and just like in at the Plaza Hotel, you got the Trump cameo. I just think that like is part of the allure to the second one, that when it comes to the mystique and excitement of Christmas, and I'm kind of like a Kevin McAllister, like I love the trees, I love the lights, I love the decorations, I love all things Christmas. I'm a post once Thanksgiving comes around, that Thursday night, you're digesting your turkey, you want to put Home Alone on, go for it. And then all of December, I'm all about it. And so I really like that part of it. That's similar to Kevin. Like I'm a sucker for, going to see the tree at Rockefeller Center, or, putting the decorations up, putting on the Christmas music, all that good stuff. And so I've been around New York City around the holidays. It's crowded, but it is really cool. It is a lot of fun. There is a lot of, just magic in the air, so to speak. And I think they did a nice job of capturing that, which isn't easy to do.
Wow. Yeah, sounds good. Well, there's definitely that personal connection there. Yeah, it sounds like these movies are kind of important to you because you really connected to the character in a lot of ways. It really embodies the Christmas spirit for you could say.
Yeah, Kevin's all. I mean, even though he's a little jerk to quote Uncle Frank, uh, look what you did, you little jerk.
Mhm.
He does have a good heart. I think that's kind of what you were touching on a little bit. You almost see that character development from one through two
Mhm.
to get you to where he is by the end of that film. And then here's a question though: how did Duncan's toy chest connect the dots to the hotel room that they were staying in to drop off all those presents at the end of the
Oh.
second film? That I'm not
Hmm.
100% sure, but I like that his good-heartedness in catching the bad guys and, Mr. Duncan then, recognizing who, caught them and, prevented them from stealing the children's money, was ultimately, everything that he did was really rewarded by, getting this awesome Christmas in snowy New York with all of his family there. And so I like that there's a good kid inside, despite the fact that, because I mean, hey, as awesome as the '90s were, I mean, you guys know there's some bullies back in the '90s, and not all of us are, trained UFC fighters like Brad. So, you know, a lot of got to have that tough '90s kid skin to be able to, hold your own.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm really, one of these days, Brad, we're gonna have to like do a movie where one of us argues, because we have to find something more controversial. I'm telling you, because this just like, yeah, we all agree, and it's a good movie. I thought that would be prime for a debate, but no, I think they're both good. I am curious. Well, speaking of watching trailers, I don't usually do this, but I watched the trailer for Home Alone 2. Can either of you guess what the main thing they pushed for the second movie was? No, it wasn't John Candy because he wasn't in it.
Is it a
Does Trump
person?
does Trump make an appearance in
We
the
haven't
Talk
really
Boy?
talked, but well, we haven't really talked about them too much, which I think is interesting. In the second movie for this, the second trailer's movie, excuse me, the movie's second trailer, they just straight up pushed the bandits, the traps, all the destruction. Like that's like
Yeah,
90
yeah.
like the first trailer had all the setup for the plot. Second trailer, no. You're coming for the setup, you're coming for the traps, you're coming for Kevin versus the wet or AKA sticky bandits.
Sticky
So
Man's, yeah.
that's it clearly and I think they upped the eccentricity and the complications of the traps. Like maybe that's another thing. He really they really upped their game with the abandoned house that the
Mhm.
relative was having under construction and has kerosene everywhere and whatever's going on in there. I'd love more details on that place, like what he pulled out. So yeah, they pushed that, and I definitely think that was a cool thing too. Do we like the I mean, I guess we do the just the wet bandits as they're it's I think I've especially felt like the second movie really was, as Jim, you kind of said, it's almost like the classic battle of good and evil, but just the PG version because they really are bad people, but they're just kind of goofy. So, do we think that they're pretty good villains, or they work pretty well? They're funny. I mean, do we have any thoughts about? Because I feel like they're some of the most iconic things about the movie too. Joe Pesci without cursing, and the other guy,
Yeah, Daniel Stern.
Daniel
Daniel
Stern,
Stern.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe his Uncle Rob is actually Jigsaw. That's kind of the vibe I get from that horror house. That
Oh man.
this was foreshadowing for
I,
a great horror series down the road, which is a podcast in and of itself. But no, I think that's part of number two. The way, and I get it's a little bit of a stretch that they break out and end up in New York at the same time that he's. But again, it's all that's the magic of the movies.
Indeed.
But I don't think two. If they tried to introduce new villains, I'd be sitting here saying, nope, not interested. You
Mm.
got to have Joe Pesci with his head on fire. You got to have Daniel Stern just being a total goofus. The two of them playing off of each other. Uh, one tall, one short. One serious, one goofy. Both, acting like. And shout out to Joe Pesci that he was willing to take both of these roles because I could have seen him, saying, "Okay, yeah, I'll do the first one. It's a good script, or it's a good role for me." But I could almost see him by the second one being like, "All right, enough of me looking like a dope," and for him to buy in and be like, "Yeah, no, let's do it. I like the script. I'm in." Now, I don't know what the paycheck was either, if that maybe played a role
Probably.
in his decision. But I love them in both. I think they really help to make the film, and really Joe Pesci. I'm a big Joe Pesci fan. Obviously very talented, tons of accolades, and so for him to be willing to do that role and kind of make himself that goofy villain and kind of have this kid outsmart him I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Yeah,
kudos to
good.
him.
Yeah, good villains. I mean, they could have maybe tried to get Al Pacino in there, but as a sticky bandit.
You need people like me.
But
No, he would have been like the ringleader of multiple sects of of the sticky band. Hey, again with the
What they could have
oh
done
man.
is they could have had, if Al Pacino worked for the Chicago Police Department, he would have
Ooh,
been detective number one. He would have had the sticky bandits behind bars before they even got to Kevin's neighborhood.
what are we talking about here?
too
Yeah,
too
he's like
powerful, too
too
good.
much. Hey,
It'd be
what
the prequel
about
to Heat, you know.
what happened to Snakes?
Oh, yeah. That is PG was different back in the day. That's all I'm gonna say. Times
That's
have
one of my
changed with what
favorite
you can get
parts.
away with. And a kids were like, he
That's one of
gets
my
blown
favorite
away.
parts about
He gets. I'm like, I know it's like a 30s movie. The 30, you get blown away. It's like,
Different
keep the
times. It made it
change, you
tough.
filthy animal.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
I think
Snakes.
there's
Oh,
are we allowed to swear on this podcast or no swearing?
keep it PG, much like Kevin McAllister is what I say.
Okay. Well, he caught there's a horse's what is thrown in. I think the second one. Kevin throws a horse's rear end out there,
Oh
uh,
Mm.
yeah.
kind of like like, oh, okay, all right.
A little salty, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple scenes that are maybe a little. Am I correct? You guys are the movie buffs. Poltergeist was the film that introduced the idea of a PG-13 because it was going,
Ooh.
or no, I think here's what happened. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Poltergeist is PG, which is ridiculous. Like Home
Oh,
Alone, okay, PG, yeah,
the PG back then was
because there was no
his umbrella.
PG-13.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was an
Yeah.
umbrella
so it
thing.
was just G, PG, or R,
Yep.
Because
and
yeah,
Poltergeist was given R, and Steven Spielberg was like, "I know it's not going to do as well with the R rating," and kind of pleaded with his connections to say, "Give it a PG," because that's the one that's really like you watch Poltergeist and you're like, "This is PG? Are you kidding me?" And then after Poltergeist is where they introduced the concept of PG-13 for that kind of in the middle, not too intense, but a little too racy for the kids.
I believe you're correct about that. I
yeah,
think.
that sounds right to me. Because back then, like I remember last year, I think it was, I watched, what was it? Mutiny on the Bounty, I think,
Oh
which is
yeah, that's
PG. It's just topless
wait,
women all day,
wait.
and then
The
like,
the
like,
Anthony Hopkins one,
is that the one I'm thinking of with
the '80s one. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's a bunch of naked people and there's like
hooah,
sword
yeah,
fight.
it's
Yeah,
I'm like, well, this is
Al Pacino's
yeah,
not in that one.
no, he should be, but anyway, it's like
Should
Stop.
be in every movie.
yeah, I think you're right about Poltergeist.
I'm gonna fact check just to get. Oh, okay. Oh well, this is a different thing. I think you're right about that, but I don't know. Maybe you know this, Jim, because you're big on trivia. Do you know what the first PG-13 movie was? I actually didn't know this.
That's a great question. And I should, and you're going to say it, and I'm going to say, yep. It's not an Indiana Jones film, is it?
Mm-mm.
Is it a fairly recognizable film?
I would think so. Not like the biggest thing ever, but like '80s action movie. High school kids might appreciate it if they sneak a watch. I'm sure.
Does it have Charlie Sheen?
Oh, it. Oh my goodness, I don't know. It might. I don't know. I, I,
I feel
all
like
right,
it's
I'll
like
let you.
what's the spoof
I'm
that
gonna
Charlie
give
Sheen
you.
did about Top Gun? I don't know why that's coming to mind.
Oh, Hot Shots or
Hot
whatever?
Shots?
Yeah, I don't know
Was
why.
that? Is it
That's
Hot
my
Shots?
guess, but I'm guessing it's wrong. Brad, you
Uh,
got any
uh,
guesses?
yeah, I
Mm.
forgot. It's an
No, but
action movie. I'm just gonna
what's
see
the
if I can.
year?
1984. Well, that's a good year for movies too. We'll see if actually Jim was right. I don't know if
Predator?
Charlie.
No, that's a little
No.
later. Predator's
Okay.
later.
Actually. Actually, no. Jim, you're right. Charlie Sheen is in this. Charlie Sheen is in this. Yes, you were right. You're right. Charlie Sheen is in it.
But it's not Hot Shots.
But it's not Hot Shots. It'll be
Okay.
before Hot Shots. But yeah, you're right. You are right. He's in it. He's in it. You're right. Yeah.
All right, Brad, I got you. I got you halfway. 80s Sheen action film.
I feel like if I tell you the other person that's in it, you guys are gonna get it.
I'm blanking on it.
You want me to give it to you?
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze starred in it. He was like the main star.
Oh, is it I can't think of what.
Is Keanu Reeves in it?
No,
No, it's
no,
not. What's that one?
not that's a little too early for him. I think he would have been like a real
Okay.
little kid.
You know what I'm
Uh,
talking about, though? The one where he's like a detective, but he gets in with, isn't that Swayze's like group of like high flying, men?
Point
Point
Break.
Break?
Yes,
I
Yeah.
am an
that's
FBI agent,
yeah.
man.
Um, Sheen
It's
action early 80s. You're gonna say it, and I'm gonna be disappointed that I didn't get it. But
well, okay. Red Dawn.
I was about to say Red Dawn. Yeah, it's the one I couldn't. Yeah.
what's funny is, for some reason in my head, I kept thinking Red October, and I was like, it's
That's
not. I
what's
know it's not
wrong.
the one for Red
It's Al
October.
Pacino.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
the Russian subs.
Red Dawn.
Yeah, there you go.
But Red Dawn is yeah, it's right. Red Dawn is what like the Russians take over, like right.
You know what? I've
Yeah,
never seen the whole thing.
well, it gets pretty dark. Yeah, it's Russia and
I've
like
never watched
Cuba
the whole
invades
thing.
us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty bold movie actually. I think it's a lot. But anyway, we've gotten pretty far off the rails. Does that mean we've said everything that can be said this evening about the Home Alone films?
Hmm.
Ponder upon that.
So, Jim, if you had to pick one,
If you, I mean, again, both great. But if you said, hey, which one, just throw on, and it just makes you laugh a little harder, I'd probably go with two. I just think there's a little more star power. Like you said, New York City, the hotel, Duncan's Toy Chest, which is actually is it ELO Sports? Is that the name of the actual toy store in New York?
that sounds right. Yeah.
It's something like
They
that.
used
Yeah.
in a couple movies. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think two, just you put it on, and I just think it's a little. I feel like one, you got to like really sit there and watch it. I feel like two is a solid, like, you know what, I'm putting ornaments on the tree, and I want to get in the mood. Let me just throw two on, and I just think it surprises me every time. I always think like, two, whatever, and I think the concierge staff and they really do a great job of kind of bringing that film together. I will say, great line in Home Alone 1. One of my favorite lines is when you alluded to this, Joe, when he's having that heart to heart with the old man next door. And he talks about how his grandmother got him a sweater with a duck or a knit on it or something like that. And the old guy says, "Oh, that's nice." He says, "Not when you're in the second grade. I know a kid that got beat up because there was a rumor he wore dinosaur pajamas." That line gets me every single time. I think that's hysterical. And the look on the old man's face, like, "Oh, okay." And then the other kid that cracks me up in that movie is the neighbor when they're like getting ready to get transferred to the airport. And there's this kid bothering the driver. And he's like, "Does this thing have four-wheel drive?
Yeah.
How fast can this thing go?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, kid. Like, get out." And then it is pretty
Cut
clever
back.
the way they stick him in to count him as part of the total kids. It's also
Mhm.
clever in the first one, the way that the ticket goes in the trash can when they spill all the milk and make the whole mess. Also, who's drinking milk with pizza? I don't know. It's not
Oh,
uh, my
mysterious.
go-to, but to each their own. And then I love the way in the second one, the way he runs into the stewardess at the gate, and tickets go everywhere, and he just kind of boredom. I also might argue maybe this is why I like two a little better. The music in one is great, but it's a little bit more of like the more orchestra John Williams, which is awesome. They still work that into two, but I think there's a little bit more of just kind of like the Christmas, like the upbeat kind of fun Christmas classics, like when he's going across the George Washington Bridge and kind of doing all the sightseeing. Also, kind of interesting, Twin Towers, makes a prominent appearance in Home Alone 2. That always kind of, I'm sure anyone that grew up when we did. Anytime you see the Twin Towers and think about 9/11, and it's kind of crazy that that's pre 9/11 and that's in there. And so this is, it's just, I don't know. When I think about one, it's like, yeah, it's awesome. I loved it. I loved it when I was a kid, but I just think there's a lot more noteworthy in terms of Americana pop culture. It's really fun. It's really good. And it's not overly forced. It just kind of happens naturally. Whereas usually, like I said, those sequels, they just try so hard to get as many cameos. And like Brad was saying, the big explosions and just way over the top. And they were able to get all of that pop culture, Americana, New York City, classic New York into the film without feeling ugh, come on. Like it just really, it had a very natural, and so I give a huge credit to the screenwriters who I think the original, hey, we crushed it, but then to do it again is just so hard. And I think that's why I give the nod to number two.
Wow. It's like one of the great conclusions. Yeah, I mean, I concur. I was like wondering, like, oh man, I don't know. He kept it pretty close to the chest there. I didn't know how he was going to feel, but I'm glad. I'm glad that people here seem to be kind of agreeing about the consensus for Home Alone 2. I think it's quite excellent. I think you summed it all up pretty well, Jim. Honestly, it's very good. Brad, before you give your thoughts, I did want to mention something. Brad, did you notice that Home Alone could in fact be a crossover with a certain Kubrickian film you like, The Shining? Did you find the crossover
No,
element?
but it's weird because I was just thinking about that. What is the
Of course they were.
No, I don't know. I was thinking about I was thinking about the hotel, and then I was like,
Well, okay,
whoa.
not well. Just it's interesting. Some of these, primal fears. Kevin's afraid of the boiler. It's another evil boiler.
Oh
Just
yeah,
saying.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
the little boy, the boiler.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I will say one more, just a closing thought for me is
Mm-hmm.
how great of an actor Macaulay Culkin is in those
Oh
movies
man.
for his age. It would not be nowhere near as good if you had somebody else. And this is before like you would pull child actors out of like the Disney Channel, and they have a really kind of canned, hammy, overacting, whatever. He's a
Mm-hmm.
natural actor. I mean, and then whatever happened later in his life, like he's really good in those movies.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
I
think I
think
think Macaulay Culkin is he's underrated too,
yeah,
in a way.
yeah, very like he very emotive, like with his face, his features. It comes off natural. It's funny. He interacts with adult. I mean, he's kind of good, like, really good. So if you had another kid in there doing that, I don't think it flies the same way.
Yeah,
So
no,
you
he
guys,
owns it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
really just owns the character, and it's just like he is Kevin McAllister. You're 100% right.
so you guys are saying that if somebody else tried to embody the role, like if they did ever decide to make like a Home Alone 3 or 4 or 5 or something, and he couldn't be in it, it might not have the same impact. Is kind of what I'm getting here.
Did they make a 4?
I think there might be six.
Oh my lord. Is
6.
there a
That
is it
if you go on Disney Plus, I think since the
did they give
creation
it the
of Disney
Karate
Plus,
Kid
there's been
treatment?
another one or two iterations, which is
There's like a
insane.
girl, and then
The next Home Alone.
there's an orangutan or something. Like it's
Yeah.
Dunstan checks in.
You're not
Um,
checking out, Dunstan. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know when you guys are doing your takes on Dunstan checks in, and that'll be the next
oh,
time I come on
oh,
the podcast.
oh my goodness. Um,
Dunstan.
Dunstan checks. um, well, I know it's getting late and we all got to get up early. So, Brad, are you cool with wrapping it up here? I think that
Yeah.
sounds like a good place.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I'll just set us up with the outro. Yeah, please, like, subscribe, wherever we decide to put this. Please share your thoughts on Home Alone, other Christmas movies you like, other requests for things for us to talk about, of course. Want to thank Jim for being on as a guest. Looking forward to having him back sometime. And I'm gonna say goodbye, Joe, and Brad could say goodbye, Brad, and Jim's goodbye, Jim, and so forth.
Yeah, I'm going to say goodbye. Also, Jim, thanks for coming on and doing this. It was fun, and for bearing with some of the technical difficulties we had at the beginning.
Always.
It was a good conversation. So, thank you very much for that, and thanks, Joe. And that's it.
Yeah, hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. You let me know next time we're doing some 90s, films from our childhood. That's my specialty. So you keep me posted, and you guys have a Merry Christmas, okay?
All right.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.